Great. I'm so excited.
I'm Capriana, and I'm an interviewer here at WMAP Radio. You can tune in weekdays from 2 to 5 to catch me and some of the incredible guests that join us on our show, from doctors to authors, life coaches, actors to entrepreneurs. You can hear their stories here every day. Tune into our Long Island station, 103.9 FM weeknights from 7 to 8, in Orlando, Florida, 94.1 The Bud, and 24/7 at WMAPradio.com, where we bring you the world's most amazing people. Make us part of your day.
All right, happy Monday. It's Capriana on WMAP Radio. So I have a reoccurring guest. She's come on our show quite a few times before. She really does have an amazing story. She has a book that's available for pre-order now, bookstores, coming in November 2019. She is a certified life coach, best-selling author of Wake Me from the Nightmare, Hope, Healing, and Empowerment After Suicide Loss. Jade McAuliffe, how are you?
I'm great. Thank you.
Thank you for coming on our show.
Thanks for having me.
All right. So, this is my first time ever doing an interview before with you. And to any of our listeners that are listening right now that don't know your story, just tell us a little about yourself.
Oh, boy. I'm a certified life coach. I'm certified through the Angry Therapist. And basically, I have to say that I'm an expert on suicide postvention and prevention because I am a two-time suicide survivor and also a suicide loss survivor. I've lost members of my my family. So unfortunately, it's kind of the hard knocks kind of a situation.
Yeah.
Not the most pleasant way to become an expert in something, but anyway, it's what I know and it's what I've lived. So
yeah, you've definitely been through quite a lot. So I know you have a book. It's called Wake Me from the Nightmare: Hope, Healing, and Empowerment After Suicide Loss. So I know you were saying that you've been through things yourself, and you've also been through things with your family. So basically, tell us what the book is a little about.
Well, the book is basically it's kind of a guidebook. I wanted, because of the suicide still the stigma. I'm switching my words around. Because of the stigma still surrounding suicide, so many people end up grieving alone or silently because they have no place to really turn where people can really get them. I think as a whole, people really feel kind of like they're carrying some sort of disease when they're going through this, because people are afraid to approach us. People don't know what to say. There's a heaviness that goes with this type of grief, and it makes a lot of people uncomfortable, and it makes the people going through it just feel really isolated. And so I wanted to create a book that people could go to that would sort of take them by the hand and coach them through their particular experience. And because I know grief is not a one-size-fits-all thing and that it's going to take a considerable amount of time, I just wanted to give people permission to grieve in their own way and in their own time, but with some tips and tools that really helped me sort of create a safe space to grieve and to empower myself through the process. Because when you lose someone to suicide, you feel like the rug has come out from underneath your life, and it's all just kind of hanging there somewhere. And you don't know who you are, what you're supposed to do. You don't know how to feel. You're confused. You're angry. You have all these intense emotions. So the idea was to kind of give people, a useful guidebook that could meet them where they were at, and like I said, take them through the process by the hand. It's written like a love letter.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, when it comes to suicide and everything like that, or like depression, a lot of people feel like it's something that's wrong with them, but we have to like look at like the bigger picture, like sometimes, it's things that are like happening in our lives that, we try to control, like when it comes to like money or things like that, that could really bring us down. And when it comes to just being depressed, it's really such a hard time because you really do want to isolate yourself from everybody when, you're kind of just like screaming out for help and you want people to surround you and be there for you. But depression is such a hard thing on so many people because the more we want people in our lives, the more that we push them away. It's definitely very terrible to go through. And then, I'm very sorry that you went through something like this and that you've had family members, that suffered from depression and all of that.
Yeah, it was rough, and it was, it ran through my family. So, excuse me, I think that, trauma runs through families, and when people don't have the tools to be able to kind of rise above it, get through it and rise above it to heal the family, it just keeps going.
Of course. So your book is kind of like a guideline to kind of help you get through that process of grieving.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So just tell us a little about what got you to write a book like this.
Well, I had such a hard time after my sister died because she was our connection. Well, we lost a sister in 1996. She died suddenly, stopped breathing, and one day she was there, and the next day she was gone, and she was suffering from chronic pain, and I'd seen her a few times that year when, none of, my other family members didn't see how she was going downhill. And physically she was suffering because she was recovering from a second back surgery. And emotionally she was suffering because I was, finding her crying and she wouldn't talk, and she just sort of slowly disconnected. But as sisters, my middle sister and I, this was our oldest sister, my middle sister and I had each other to get us through this.
Right.
Because at that time, we were disconnected from the other members of our family. We were trying to, sometimes people are toxic, and in order for you to get better, you have to, cut ties or go silent with members of your own family in order to move forward in your own life, because they don't support your healing, because if you don't stay down with them, they have two choices. They can either rise up to meet you or they don't.
Right.
And when they don't, they either pull you down or you have to make the decision to pull away. So that's what I did for myself, and my middle sister did too. And so, like I said, we had each other, but then I think it was around 2008 when she started having a lot of problems with depression. Before that, she didn't. She had problems with anxiety, but I was more the one that was struggling with depression in and out of hospitals. I had struggled with eating disorders, which we talked about the last time. And, she had never been in a hospital. She was never on any medication. I always thought she handled everything so well. She graduated college and was very successful and connected to the community. And then starting after losing her job, she was having trouble finding another one. And that was just sort of the beginning of the end. And, like you say, money can be a big issue too. But I think when you come from a really dysfunctional family where, you're traumatized and you're not able to fully deal with and integrate that trauma, I think it really takes a toll on you eventually. And I'd been working on it for decades, and she had worked on it for a while, but I think she stopped. She kind of did it on and off. But once she started going downhill, she went down fast, and she was she was more than my sister. She was my surrogate mother. She was my mentor. She was my advocate.
Wow.
You know, she was the go-to in the family for, here's my problem, you know, how would you solve it? And she would try to solve it when you wouldn't ask her for the solution too. So, but that was just her, you know, she was very steady. And when she didn't make it, I thought, oh my God, you know, I might not make it either. And it was weird because my first impulse after I hung up the phone, I left my mother a really horrible message on her answering machine. And I hadn't spoken to my mother in like 15 years. And I left this horrible message, hung up the phone, and I walked past the kitchen counter and I saw something on the counter, and I had an urge to really harm myself. And it scared me because it was not a way I'd ever considered before. Let's put it that way. And I thought, holy cow, you know, this isn't good. I have to make sure that I get myself some help because this is, you know, like I said, it scared me.
Sometimes when you're going through something like that, or, you know, or if you're depressed or if you're feeling down, you know, you really do sometimes have irrational decisions that you make. And I think that's like a big line that's kind of like drawn when it comes to those things. You know, you're not really thinking clearly or having like cognitive thoughts. So, you know, you're not really actually thinking. So when you actually see something, like let's say you see something on the counter in the kitchen, you know, your immediate thought is, you know, how could I make myself feel better? You know, and it's a terrible thing, and it's definitely very scary to, you know, think those things. And, you know, it's amazing that you actually wanted to get help to make yourself feel better. You know, that's a lot of things that people don't actually do. They just keep suffering and suffering, and then it gets worse and worse until they eventually explode and they actually do something to themselves.
Right, and that's all it is. You're right. It's the pain. You just want an end to the pain. You know, in my case, I was like, how am I going to do this without my sister? Sister has always been there for me, even when we weren't close, and we weren't physically close. She was on the East Coast, and I'm in the Midwest.
Right.
But somehow, you know, her home I still considered my home. It was my home away from home, and without her, she, you know, I thought she was my strength. She, like I said, she was my advocate. She was one of the only people that ever stood up for me in my lifetime, and especially, you know, even stood up to my parents on my behalf.
How long after your sister passed away did you feel these feelings? Did you feel them immediately, or was this something that you just kept growing and growing inside you that was just festering? Oh
no, I mean, that happened the day I found out that the day I had that impulse was just minutes after finding out she was dead. And then through the grieving process, I had it on and off because the pain is so bad. You know, all you can think of is, oh my God, I just want to be with this person, and how am I going to get through this pain, and how can I make sense of this? And, you know, you go through the guilt and what could I have done, and the blame. It was their fault. Like, and one day I just started screaming. Nobody was home, thank God, but I was watching this movie that triggered me, and I ended up on my knees screaming at her and screaming at God and screaming at my parents, you know, going, how could you do this, you know? And my sister, how could you leave us like this? You know, just leave us to clean this mess up. You know, and now, you know, we're stuck with this memory, and you know, but the fact is, she was hurting, and she could not figure out a way to, you know, to stop what was happening to her, because she was having body memories and flashbacks and things, and they were coming out in different ways. And when that happens, it's really scary for onlookers, and my sister was extremely stubborn, so she wasn't real cooperative. Her family did their best to get her the help she needed, but they just, you know, they did everything they could, and sometimes suicide just is not preventable, and I think that that's an important message for people, because everybody says it's preventable. It's preventable. It's preventable. Well, it is just like preventing heart attacks. You can do everything you can to try to prevent it, but the person has to make life changes to prevent it, So if the person who's isn't believing it's preventable or believing that there's a way to deal with their pain and find relief from their pain, then it's going to be their choice.
Yeah.
And ultimately their responsibility, and I don't mean that in a mean way, but I mean that it's all of our responsibility to care for ourselves and to do what we need to do to find relief. And I think the major underlying issue to suicide is trauma, unresolved trauma, and stressors that just become so much that people just are overwhelmed and can't handle them.
I think a lot with the depression, actually, what everybody can really relate to, everybody thinks about Robin Williams a couple of years ago. Everybody thinks, he was this comedian. He was so happy. He was smiling all the time. But nobody actually knew that he was deep down suffering from depression inside. So when, when he took his own life a couple of years ago, that hit, America or just even this world like a sandstorm, and everybody really didn't know that he was suffering in silence. So that really goes to show you that, people can seem like they're very happy on the outside, but you really don't know what's going on in someone's mind on the inside.
That's so true. That's so true. And oftentimes these are people who tend to take care of others, so they think they have to be this person for everybody else, but inside they're dying, So I think a really good indicator for people, even when they're smiling, is to look into their eyes. Because I was seeing one of my energy workers one time, and I showed her a picture of my oldest sister, and she said, look at her, I think it was her left eye. She said her left eye is crying. And I looked at the picture and I was shocked. I was like, oh my God. Her left eye was crying. It looked like there was a tear in her eye. And I think the eyes are really telling. And we don't always stop and take the time to really witness people and really kind of observe. And, not to say that we can, save everybody, because we can't.
Right.
We can only offer the tips we have, but it's up to them, to take action too.
Of course, yeah. And I see so many things online where, people are saying, we need to be nicer to people. We need to, stop the commenting hate on social media and all of that, how it's like really affecting people, and being on social media, we could scroll for hours and then, we can have somebody comment on our picture and it can make us feel horrible about ourselves. Or even on like a Facebook video or like a news post, you can comment something and then someone's always going to have something negative to say. But I feel like social media, everybody always says that you have to be kinder to people, you have to be nicer to people. But the sad thing is, I think that it's only going to get worse when it comes to, being online, because there's like keyboard warriors. That's something that people say, a keyboard warriors, someone that hides behind their computer and they have so much power because they're able to say whatever they want without actually like affecting somebody in person, without actually seeing the person. So you're able to say something horrible to somebody and you don't realize the negative things that you're saying to this person. So if I'm reading, hate mail or something like that, people don't realize that there's another person that's behind this keyboard that's actually reading that. So I think depression and all that is just going to keep growing and growing. I would love to say that we should all be kinder and be nicer to people, but I think with like how technology and all that's going, it's really hard with social media.
You're right. It really is. And one of the things that I teach people to do in Wake Me From the Nightmare is to protect their space and to be really careful about who they allow into their lives and what they put up with. Because whatever you tolerate, you're teaching other people how to treat you. And so if you run into somebody like that on social media, I would say block them. You know, don't try to interact. I mean, you know, if you can if you want to, but if there are people like that, that's abusive. That's an act of somebody who's a coward, who's gonna, you know, post things like that. And there are people that know exactly what they're doing, and they want to hurt people because they're hurting inside. And that gives them all kinds of, you know, anonymity in a screen gives people all kinds of power to hurt other people. And I think I think people always have to be on the lookout, you know, and try to figure out how to care for themselves better and not, you know, subject yourself as little as possible. It's harder for teenagers because it's so rampant, you know, and they're so mean. You know, they can be, not all of them, but, you know, obviously. But kids tend to be mean to each other. And, you know, I just tell my daughter, if somebody's like that, you don't give them the time of day. You know, block them, don't give them access, don't feed the fire, don't engage, just disconnect. And you don't have to do it in a mean way or in any way. You just go silent. Because when you go silent with those people, that's what drives them crazy.
They're trying to get a reaction out of you.
They want a reaction more than anything.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, when it comes to social media, I mean, it's really such a big world out there that could definitely be harmful towards a lot of young children and teenagers, and even myself personally. I want to talk about your book, Wake Me from the Nightmare. It's going to be available in bookstores November 2019, and then you can also pre-order it now. Can you pre-order it on Amazon?
You know what? I haven't popped on there. I know it's available for pre-order on Barnes & Noble and also Books A Million. And I'm pretty sure it's available on Amazon for pre-order as well.
So it says, Wake Me Up from the Nightmare, Hope, Healing, and Empowerment After Suicide Loss. So is one of the topics that you briefly talk about in there, like the journey from, you know, the dark place that you went through. Is that one of the things that you briefly touch upon in there?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's not exactly what people thought it would be. The whole thing, I mean, I'm kind of sprinkled throughout the book. One of the chapters is devoted to my story, but the rest is really leading people through their own experience and, you know, like I said, offering tools to help them protect themselves and help them find supports that will truly support them.
Of course.
And honor their journey. Yeah.
Yeah. You've definitely been through quite a lot. I mean, between yourself and your family and all of that, you know, so you've really been through quite so much when it comes to these things. So what is a good way that if someone's listening right now, if someone is going through, you know, depression, or if they're, you know, thinking about like self-doubt and they're not really feeling, you know, their best selves, what is a good way to get out of that dark place?
Well, I think reaching out for support is a really good thing, of course. I'm always going to advocate for that, because if you're really, really struggling, then, you know, and especially if you're struggling with suicidal ideation, it's, you know, get yourself some help. And there are coaches out there, too, that can be helpful. You don't have to do therapy. If therapy is not your jam, there are coaches out there that can give you tools that can you know, kind of relieve the stress. And, you know, none of us do this healing thing alone. We all need someone to witness, witness our journeys and witness our feelings. And that's the other thing. You really can't heal until you really allow yourself to sit with the pain. And I know it sounds counterintuitive, because as Americans, we get out of pain, right? That's why we take medicine and stuff. But the medicine, it'll help, but it's not going to resolve the underlying issue. You know, you really have to get to the core and allow yourself to sit in that sadness and feel that sadness and feel that fear, and just understand that if you can feel it and be with it, and furthermore, if you can acknowledge it and say, okay, because here's where the problem really starts is when you start telling yourself, I shouldn't be feeling this way.
Right.
You know, there's something wrong with me. I'm going to tell you right now, there is nothing wrong with you if you're feeling a certain way. You know, if you're depressed, there's a reason for that. There's a reason for every single feeling that we have. And when we can surrender to them and let them be without judging them, you know, they will move through us and we will eventually feel relieved. And we have to remember that healing is cyclical. It's not linear. You know, it's ups and it's downs. And when you're down, you will come back up again. You know, the downs don't last forever. But if you've been down for too long, find some help. And at the very least, you can always call the Suicide Prevention Lifeline.
Do you know the number? Off the top of your head, do you know the number?
I do. It's 800-273-8255 or TALK, T-A-L-K.
Great. And, you know, I really do think with what you were saying before, I think a lot of people think that, you know, they had to go to therapy and, you know, if they're depressed and they're feeling very down, that there's something wrong with them. But because you're feeling emotion, there is absolutely nothing wrong with you. There's a problem when you are taking this medication that's masking your feelings and you are feeling nothing at all. You know, if let's say like my dog gets hit by a car and I don't feel any emotion at all because what I'm taking, you know, there's certain things in your life where you should be feeling sad. You should be feeling happy. You should be feeling the basic emotions in life. So when you're taking like these medications that are completely masking over, you know, any emotions, kind of making you into a zombie-like figure, and you're not really feeling happy nor sad, that's not good. And, you know, and feeling sad isn't always a bad thing. You know, it's a basic emotion, a human emotion that we are supposed to be feeling.
Yeah, I agree. And medication does have its place, but at the same time, you're right. You don't want to completely numb it out, because when you do that, all you're doing is prolonging it, because the medication probably won't mask things forever. You know, that's why people are switching medications all the time, because all of a sudden it doesn't work. Well, why? Because something probably triggered something in them, and they're either really angry or really sad, and they're not used to feeling their feelings, you know. But yeah, we need to sit with them and feel them, and it really helps to have somebody to be your enlightened witness and walk the journey with you. And so that's my goal with Wake Me from the Nightmare, and that is my goal as a coach, to walk people through this, to give them tools to be able to handle it, because the people most at risk of attempting suicide are suicide loss survivors.
Yeah, of course. Those people are the ones that have really been through a lot and been through a lot of trauma, and it's definitely something very hard and strenuous on yourself.
Yeah, because you're blaming yourself. You know, why didn't I see the signs? You know, because if this is preventable, I should have been able to prevent it. Well, no, it's not always preventable. Remember heart attacks. Those aren't always preventable.
Of course. And then, you know, sometimes, like I said before, you know, sometimes the happiest people could be the ones that are actually suffering on the inside. So you really never truly know what is going on in someone's mind. I just want to let our listeners know that we are talking to Jade McAuliffe. She is a best-selling author and life coach. She has a book. It's called Wake Me from the Nightmare: Hope, Healing, and Empowerment After Suicide Loss. Jade McAuliffe, you know, we're just about out of time. Just let our listeners know where we would be able to reach you, or where we would be able to find your book.
Oh, you can find me at noparameters.org, and you can find my book on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and Books A Million.
Awesome. And then also in bookstores, November 2019, it's also going to be released, Wake Me from the Nightmare: Hope, Healing, and Empowerment After Suicide Loss. Jade, thank you for coming on the show. It was really great speaking with you. All right. You have a great week.
Thank you. You too. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Everything seems like a city of dreams. I'll never know why, but I still miss you. There she's standing in a field of lights. I close my eyes, but I still miss you. I still miss you. I still miss you.
Wait to hear, about I can't wait to join in our next conversation, hear about the next motif, and I very much look forward to it. So thank you for coming on the show today, Robert.
You're welcome. Thank you, Kelly. Have a great day.
Thank you. You too.
Bye.
Bye. All right, guys, I want to remind you again that don't forget to tune in every Tuesday at 5 p.m. for the Mayor's Corner with Port Jeff's own Mayor Garan. So it's a really great show, so tune in there and you can listen, and keep listening for some more great shows. Thanks, guys.
I'm charging the scenery beautifully. How you figured that the Garden of Eden would be? Problem with a net, their side, it ain't face. Steps to perfection. I am a staircase. We'll build around his spine out. You figure I'm an overdose before you even get official word. Amy Winehouse. Minor weaponry from the time of the Byzantines. You talking metaphysically, but she knows metal physically. The epitome of infinity and validity of my divinity. Half animal activity, only monster in captivity. Legitimately.
Who Marcy Stone is. Marcy Stone is going to be in Simply Amazing Women. Follow-up to the best-selling Simply Amazing. And her story is just incredible. And she's someone who has been through a bunch of challenges. And once you hear what we're going to talk about today, you probably will remember this. This woman has gone through. Look, I don't have kids, all right? I got nephews. I got people I love, I care about. But I've heard that a mother's love is something that is irreplaceable. And it's so special, the bond. Marcy Stone went through a challenge, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. She's a certified life coach, and her website is marcystone.com. As I said, she'll be in the book, and we're going to talk about Sydney today. Marcy, are you on the air?
I am, Casey. Hi.
Hey, bud. What's going on?
Oh, that was just, you got me a little choked up there already. Nice start.
I'm sorry.
Mother's love. No, it's completely right on the money.
First of all, your daughter, Sydney, was brilliant. She was very attractive. She was a pretty girl, and she was just she just made people happy, right?
She absolutely did. It was, I believe, her calling.
And since as far back as you can remember, did she always have that? Was she shy? Tell me what she was like growing up.
Shy is never a word I would use to define Sydney.
Okay.
Never.
Right. Okay.
No. She was incredibly outgoing. She was witty. She had a very dry sense of humor. If she picked on you, then you knew you were in the in crowd, so means she loved you. If she didn't pick on you, it was a sign.
Okay. All right. It's like a good coach.